I'm joined here today by Dave Cockburn, Lasswade's coach, and Richard Borthwick, Gav Brown. Dave, we'll not talk too much about today's game. It wasn't a spectacle of rugby by any means. Glasgow came off second best, but it does round off the end of the season for us.
Yes, it does. It's been a bit unfortunate. It's been a very bitty season this year. We've not really been able to train, partly because of the weather. We've not been able to train because personnel have not been available. And really the last week has been the first two real sessions we've had together in the last, 2 months. But I'm sure that happens to most sides. They actually brought up a really strong side. So that means that they've not been putting a strong side out over the last 2 or 3 weeks because people have just not been travelling. But they've obviously travelled for Jamie today because he's also retiring today. And so they did the business for him and they worked really hard for him. Unfortunately, we just came off second best, but we worked so hard in the second half to get that try. But unfortunately, a man in a yellow jumper didn't allow us to get that try, and I thought we actually got it in the last minute. But that's unfortunate, it's the way it goes. We've finished middle of the table, and I personally think that's a great feat for Lasswade, having done what we've done in the last 5 years.
The injury count at the start of the season certainly played its part in terms of our destination and where we're going to go this year, didn't it?
Absolutely. We've played 40 players this year. It's an indication of most clubs, if they're going to win a championship or be top or third, second or first, they're going to be talking about 26, 25 players. Tops.
Exactly. Well, today's game brings the curtain down on the season, but there's been announcements from all three of you this week which brings the curtain down on your time at Lasswade. Kobe, you've been with us for 5 seasons. In those 5 seasons, we've done 3 promotions, 2 of them as champions, 2 back-to-back wins in the Shield final at Murrayfield. Quite a fair CV, to be honest, in your time at the club. Any of the time you've been here, what would you say was your favourite moment in your 5 years of Lasswade?
I would say the best one for me is the year that we went up as second and won the National Shield. Simply for the fact that the guys had to work really hard towards the end of the whole season to get up, to get promotion, because we were still being pegged and still being played, and we actually beat Hoyt YM to do that, to get up, and we still had to beat them. So we did that, and we did that categorically by beating them 50-odd points to nothing. Yeah. So that was, for me, one of the best things. And
in terms of coaching Scottish Club Rugby, you've achieved more, as much as anybody has, in terms of the high-profile clubs you've coached as well. Where does Lasswade fit into that?
Lasswade is one of the best clubs I've ever coached in terms of having a receptive audience of players who want to develop and go forward and get better, and they've done that. I think, unfortunately, we've reached a peak just now and we need to get other players in, possibly more experienced players, but I would put a caveat in that by saying that we have got a bunch of really good young guys coming through, but they have to learn from older players. And older players coming into the club would be of real benefit, because we're losing 2 guys of massive experience, and we might be losing 1 or 2 others, we don't know. So for me, that is a key issue. But we do have some great boys like Mark Wilson, for example. I think Niall's still a young guy, obviously. We've got Cookie, who's still a young guy. There's loads of names I could just turn off my tongue, and they are still malleable. They're still people who can actually become very, very excellent rugby players.
It's in good hands, in other words.
Aye.
Gav, you've announced your retirement today. You were here as a mini rugby player, and you came back 6 years ago after a decade at Watsonians, and you've been very instrumental in the terms of the, and you've been central to a lot of the improvements and the goals that Lasswade set out to achieve and have achieved. And the statistics only go back 4 years, but we have checked your points haul, and you've got a personal points haul of 500 points plus in the last 4 seasons, which makes my 10 points from 2 tries look very meagre in comparison. But some high points from you. I mean, what stands out for you in your time here at Lasswade?
I think my favourite time with Kobe at Lasswade has got to be his Japanese haka at Dalkeith Chambers of Commerce. That's got to go down in history. I think that'll go down with everybody's history. No, the good times have been, almost every season we've been involved because the club has been evolving. So every year there's been something different, something good, and everybody has learned. And for me, the benefit is really seeing a bunch of guys that have had talent that's now been nurtured and shown and now has potential to do things. Whereas before we were kind of running with blinkers, and we've just given the club and the boys and a lot of young talent, as Kobe said, a bit of direction now. And it does, as Kobe said, it does need that youth and age-old commitment and understanding of the game to be able to nurture these guys through and bring them on, because it'd be a shame to see them go out there and be relied upon as sort of leaders of the team, because that's when some of the young players go into their shells, and it would be a shame to see that. So we really need a bit of age back in the club again, and a bit of experience. And
that will come though as time goes on.
Yeah, no, hopefully it will. Yeah, and the young guys are benefiting. We've seen a great difference in them over the years. But you know, I would hate for next year to have these young guys that have come through with older chaps all of a sudden be relied upon to pull the punches and show what they can do, because it puts a lot of pressures on young shoulders. And in the leagues we're in now, you've got to be critical of that, and you can't ask too much of players that haven't got that experience.
Richard, I'm going to ask you just to step through a bit. You're vice captain today, so as captains retire, vice captains retiring, they're falling hard and fast. Richard Borthwick, man and boy at Lasswade, came right through the ranks of the youth, right into the age group level and up into the main team. Unfortunate early retirement on your part, because you've had a bit of a string of bad injuries, which is unfortunate, and these things do happen. But it'll be a great loss and sad to see you leaving the club at this stage. I'm sure, like Gav, you would have had an awful lot more to offer in your next few years. But what's your sort of fondest memories of your latest time at Lasswade?
It's just been 13 years in the first, and it's just been non-stop success. Apart from maybe the last couple of seasons, but that's playing at the highest level. But it's just been pushing on, and that's been the best thing. The two finals, playing the name will live away forever. You've got the signed tops, we've got the...
nobody can ever take that away from you.
So that's been the good.
And what about the Boars' lucky pants? Because the boys all want to know who's going to get handed them down in succession.
Never getting washed again, so there you go. Last time on camera. And on the last legs anyway. So there you go.
This will have to go out in the 9 o'clock watershed now, I think.
Cheers. It's been good.
And do you think you leave the jersey in good hands? Who do you think's coming through that's going to step into the role?
I've got Blair, who's an excellent player. If he can just sort of get over his own injuries, I think he'll step up. But Dougie Hearn, who's pretty much replaced me like for like. But in the tackling department, but he adds go forward ball that I never ever had. So I would say more than capable.
Well, listen, guys, if I can be so bold on behalf of the club and the supporters, I'd like to wish you all the very, very best with the future and whatever you're going to do. But more importantly, we'd like to thank you for this amazing journey that you've taken us on for the last 5 years. It's truly been fantastic. And as George Anderson said, their honorary president, probably the most exciting time that he can ever remember in the club's history. And you guys have been part of that and central to it.
Scott, one last thing I'd like to say just to the club and all the boys that have been here. We realised in the club that rugby, when it's successful, breeds success. And I think if the club goes with the same ethos as we had 4 years ago for another 3 years and has a plan put in place, we all know what the club was like when it was successful, and it still is. But when times were really, really good, and everybody saw the benefit of that, and I think we can emulate that again. But everybody's got to get behind it. And, if the success breeds rugby, the club benefits and everybody benefits.
Without question.
And the guy who's driving that forward is Ian Barr. I have to say, he's not been mentioned at all in this conversation. And I think, for me, he's one of the mainstays behind that driving force. And also, I've never met a bammier bunch of players than I have in this club, ever. Thank you.
Signed off in style. Listen, I think there's a few beers ready for you boys in the clubhouse. Well done, and thanks again. Cheers.
Cheers, boys.